Imagine, for a moment, that you are waking up, but you do not wake up in a warm bed surrounded by the comfort of blankets. You wake up strapped to a cold iron slab, the metal biting into your spine. The air is thick with the cloying scent of heavy incense and the sharp chemical sting of antiseptic. You try to move your hand, to flex your fingers, but you cannot. You look down, expecting to see your skin, your scars, the history written on your flesh. But your hand is gone. Where your fingers once were, there is now a whirring cluster of mechanodendrites, cold steel pincers, and data tether ports. You feel no pain, for your nervous system has been dampened by sacred oils and neural suppressors. Instead, you feel a cold, binary clarity. You look at the limb not with horror, but with a strange, detached reverence. The weakness has been cut away. The strength of the machine has taken its place. This is the promise of the Adeptus Mechanicus. It is the most terrifying yet seductive promise in the Warhammer 40,000 universe, the promise of immortality through the abandonment of humanity. We often look at the tech priests of Mars and see monsters, figures shrouded in red robes, speaking in static, worshipping a machine god. But we rarely ask what it feels like to become one. What drives a human being to look at their own beating heart and see it as a design flaw? From the moment I understood the weakness of my flesh, it disgusted me. You have heard this quote 1,000 times. It is the mantra of the cult Mechanicus. But today, we are going to strip away the memes and the surface lore. We are going to put you on that operating table. We are going to decode the agonizing, methodical process of becoming a tech priest. We will uncover the physical torture, the psychological mutilation, and the horrifying reality of what it truly costs to serve the Omnissiah. To understand the transformation, you must first understand the hatred. You must understand why a rational human being would voluntarily undergo surgeries that would make a torturer flinch. In the grim darkness of the far future, the human body is not a temple, it is a prison. It is a failing vessel. In the 41st millennium, your flesh is a liability. It burns in the radiation of starship engines. It withers under the toxicity of hive-world smog. It breeds cancer. It ages. It tires. And ultimately, it rots. But for the disciples of Mars, the flaw of biology goes deeper than mere survival. To them, flesh is chaos. Biological systems are messy, unpredictable, and inefficient. Your heart rate fluctuates with fear. Your hands shake with adrenaline. Your brain forgets data. These are insults to the perfection of the machine god. The Omnissiah represents logic, consistency, and eternal function. To remain purely biological is to be misaligned with the divine truth of the universe. Think about the sheer fragility of your existence right now. A single microscopic virus can end you. A few minutes without oxygen can erase your mind. The tech priest looks at this fragility and feels a profound sense of dysmorphia. They do not see a body to be preserved. They see a decaying cage that is trapping their potential. They yearn for the certainty of steel, not because they hate life, but because they believe that biological life is a crude beta test version of existence that must be upgraded. This hatred of the self is cultivated from birth on Forge worlds. Children are taught that their hunger, their pain, and their emotions are symptoms of a disease called humanity. The only cure is the machine. And so the journey begins not with a surgery, but with a philosophy. Before the first cut is made, the aspirant has already mentally severed their connection to their own body. They are ready to be carved apart, believing that with every piece of meat discarded, they are getting closer to God. The process of augmentation is not a singular event. It is a lifelong journey of self-mutilation known as the quest for knowledge. It begins simply. Perhaps you are a lowly Enginseer, entrusted with the maintenance of a simple transport vehicle. Your first augments might be functional. You replace a healthy eye with a multispectral auger to see heat leaks in an engine. You replace a functioning lung with a filtration implant to breathe the toxic fumes of the forge. At this stage, you are still mostly human. You still sleep. You still eat nutrient paste. You still feel the phantom itch of the eye you lost. But the slope is slippery and it is steep. As you rise in the hierarchy of the priesthood, the demands of your station increase. You need to process data faster than a biological brain allows. You need to interface directly with the machine spirits of colossal titans. And so, the surgeries become more invasive. The crux mechanicus is the tipping point, the moment where the metal in your body outweighs the meat. This is where the horror truly begins. Imagine the sensation of having your spinal cord severed and rewired into a potentia coil, a massive power unit that hums against your vertebrae, vibrating through your entire skeletal structure. You no longer walk. You hover on anti-grav suspensors or crawl on spider-like legs because your original hips can no longer support the weight of your own upgrades. Your blood is drained and replaced with maximizing fluids and sacred unguments that do not clot, aimed at keeping the remaining organs in a state of arrested decay. But the most disturbing aspect is that this is done without anesthesia as we know it. Pain is considered a sensory input, a warning signal from the weak flesh. To dull it completely would be to miss the lesson. The aspirant chants binary canticles while the saw cuts through their ribcage. They focus on the logic of the procedure, disassociating from the screaming nerves. They tell themselves that the pain is simply the weakness leaving the body. It is a ritualistic sacrifice of the self, repeated over decades until there is almost nothing left of the person who started the journey. And yet, the physical transformation is merely the shell. A tech priest can be a towering monstrosity of adamantium and ceramite, armed with weapons that can level a building. But if their mind remains human, they are still flawed. The true horror and the true cost lies not in the replacement of the arm or the leg, but in what happens to the mind. This leads us to the dark reality of the mental surgeries and the terrifying Rite of Pure Thought. If the replacement of limbs is a physical trauma, the replacement of the mind is an existential suicide. Among the higher echelons of the Adeptus Mechanicus, there exists a procedure known as the Rite of Pure Thought. It is considered a great blessing, a holy step closer to the Omnissiah. To an outsider, it is indistinguishable from a lobotomy. The tech priest voluntarily undergoes brain surgery to replace the right hemisphere of their brain, the seat of emotion, creativity, and intuition, with a cognitive commutator bank. Consider the horror of this choice. They do not just remove the capacity for fear or hesitation, they remove the capacity for love, for joy, for empathy. They surgically excise the parts of the brain that make life worth living, replacing them with logic gates and data processors. They choose to become sociopaths in the name of efficiency. When a tech priest looks at a slaughter, they do not feel horror. They calculate the attrition rates. When they look at a dying comrade, they do not feel grief. They assess the salvageable tech. This brings us to a chilling realization, one that highlights the true depravity of the Mechanicus. We often recoil at the sight of a servitor, a mindless drone, a human lobotomized and enslaved to a task. We pity the servitor because their humanity was stolen from them. They are victims, forced into a living death. But the tech priest? The tech priest does this to themselves. They climb onto the operating table, fully aware, and demand that the surgeon cut out their soul. The servitor is a tragedy of force. The tech priest is a tragedy of will. This distinction makes the tech priest infinitely more terrifying. They have looked at the human experience, the very thing we fight to preserve, and decided it is obsolete. They replace the warmth of a memory with the cold precision of a data log. And the most frightening part? Once the surgery is done, they can no longer regret it. The part of the brain capable of feeling regret is gone, sitting in a bio-waste bin, waiting to be incinerated. Now consider this. If you are finding value in this deep dive into the nightmare of the 41st millennium, help the machine spirit of this channel grow. Like the video and subscribe. It is a logical action that requires zero augmentation to perform. Let us continue. This voluntary mutilation leads to a profound metaphysical question that plagues imperial scholars. Does a tech priest still have a soul? In the Warhammer 40K universe, the soul is not a theoretical concept. It is a tangible energy that reflects in the warp. We know that as a human loses their connection to their biological roots, their presence in the warp dims. A highly augmented magos shines much dimmer than a baseline human, their soul fire suffocated by layers of cold logic and steel. This creates a cruel paradox at the heart of the Adeptus Mechanicus. They claim to seek knowledge. They are the guardians of technology. But true invention, the spark of genius that creates something new, requires creativity. It requires the chaotic, emotional, intuitive leap that the right brain provides. By excising their emotions to become pure, they strip away their ability to invent. This is why the Mechanicus has stagnated for 10,000 years. They are no longer inventors. They are archivists. They can follow instructions, they can maintain, and they can replicate, but they can rarely create. They have traded the chaotic spark of the soul for the stability of the machine, and in doing so, they have doomed themselves to eternal repetition. They search the galaxy for STC, standard template construct fragments, because they have surgically removed the part of themselves that could design a new one. They are ghosts haunting the machinery of a dead era, worshiping the ashes of a fire they can no longer kindle. So what is life actually like once the transformation is complete? How does a high-ranking Magos perceive the universe? It is a lonely, sterile existence. They no longer see the world through biological eyes. Their optic sensors overlay reality with constant streams of data, structural integrity percentages, radiation levels, threat assessments. They do not see a sunset. They analyze the refraction of light through atmospheric pollutants. They do not hear a voice. They process audio waves and run lie detection algorithms in real time. They are connected to the noosphere, a wireless data cloud that surrounds forge worlds and battlefields. To a tech priest, the air is filled with information. They communicate with each other in binaric cant or lingua technis, a burst of machine code that transmits complex concepts in a millisecond. To a normal human standing in a room with two tech priests, there is only silence and the heavy breathing of respirators. But between the priests, an entire conversation, a debate, a transfer of encyclopedic knowledge is happening in the blink of an eye. This creates an unbridgeable gulf between the Mechanicus and the rest of humanity. They are technically on the same side as the Imperium, but they are an alien species in all but name. They look at a guardsman or a space marine and feel nothing but a distant clinical contempt. To them, unaugmented humans are fesh bags, leaking, inefficient, and slow. They are isolated by their own superiority. They have ascended to a plane of existence where no one else can follow. And in that cold, metallic height, they are utterly alone. If the journey begins with the replacement of a hand or an eye, where does it end? What is the final destination of the tech priest? For the High Magos and Archmagos of the Mechanicus, the human form is eventually discarded entirely. At the highest levels of the priesthood, they stop looking like people and start looking like events. Consider Archmagos Belisarius Call, or the rulers of Forge World Mars. They are no longer bipedal. They are towering centaurs of metal, moving upon tank treads or anti-grav suspensors. They are swarms of mechadendrites that writhe like a nest of metallic vipers. Some become so large they are essentially living buildings, merged with the cogitator banks of their starships. Others strip away everything but the brain and spinal column, floating in amniotic tanks of preservation fluid, encased within armored floating spheres. At this stage, the concept of gender, age, or identity becomes meaningless. They are simply processors. They have achieved the ultimate goal of the cult Mechanicus. They have become the machine. But in doing so, they have become monstrosities to the very species they claim to serve. If you stood before a High Magos, you would not feel like you were in the presence of a human. You would feel like you were standing before a sentient factory, a cold intelligence that views you as nothing more than a temporary arrangement of carbon atoms. The tragedy of the final ascension is that there is no finish line. The flesh is never weak enough. There is always more to replace. There is always a more efficient circuit, a faster processor, a stronger armor plating. The tech priest spends centuries chasing a horizon of perfection that does not exist, shedding pieces of themselves along the road until there is nothing left of the original person who made the choice. They become the ship of Theseus, but built of guns and hatred.
So, we return to the question we started with. Is the gift of the Omnissiah a blessing, or is it a curse? To be a tech priest in Warhammer 40,000 is to survive. It is to gain the power to endure the horrors of a galaxy that wants to eat you alive. It is to live for thousands of years, to amass knowledge that could shatter worlds, and to wield the fury of the machine god. But the cost is everything that makes life worth living. It is a Faustian bargain written in binary code. You gain eternity, but you lose the ability to feel the passage of time. You gain power, but you lose the capacity to enjoy it. You become a perfect, immortal machine functioning in a universe of endless war, but inside that shell of steel, the ghost of who you once were is trapped in a silent, cold prison. The flesh is weak. It is true. But perhaps in the grim darkness of the far future, that weakness is the only thing worth keeping. Because without the weakness of fear, there is no bravery. Without the weakness of sorrow, there is no love. And without the weakness of flesh, there is no humanity. The tech priest has cured the disease of being human, only to die of the cure. This is the disturbing reality of the Adeptus Mechanicus.